Hi scholars, it's Miss Martinez again, and I'm here with our read aloud for today. Last time I read Kitten's Full Moon, and this one is going up against The Village of Round and Square Houses. So these two will be going against each other for our March Madness book tournament. So after I read this one, go ahead and send your vote to your teacher to see which one wins and which one moves on to the next round to the other books that won. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading The Village of Round and Square Houses by Anne Griffalcony, if I said that correctly. I've never read this book, and I'm so happy we're doing this because it's introducing me to a lot of new books that I haven't read before, so I'm excited. Okay, so here we go. I'll sit this way, perfect. It was not until I was almost full grown and left my village that I found our village was like no other. For the men live in the square houses and the women in the round ones. To me, this seemed the natural order of things. But what is it like, you ask? I will tell you how it was and is for me. I grew up on my grandmother's farm in the village of Toss that lies at the foot of Naka Mountain in the Banini Hills of West Africa. We planted yams and corn and tobacco and the finest coffee grown in the Camerons. Our village was always happy and peaceful, a good place for any boy or girl to grow up. Every evening, after a day of work in the fields, Uncle Domo and Grandpa Oma came to our round house for supper. We children would hurry to put on the low wooden stool for Grandpa's Oma, for he was the eldest and closer to the ancestor spirits. Then we would unroll the grass mat for Uncle Domo, the next oldest, and was only proper and respectful. And there they would sit proudly in their bright robes, Grandpa Oma above, seated on his stool, hands on his knees, and Uncle Domo seated below. Then they would ask to see the children. One by one, we would come forward to the narrow doorway, and one by one, we would be lifted to sit up on those high and bony knees, and Grandpa would ask each one of us, "What have you learned today?" We would squirm and make an answer and wiggle out of those sharp knees and turn to help. Mama and Grandma Tika prepare the meal to come. Supper might be fish or rabbit or ground nut stew or yams. But always, I would be the one to pound and soften the white caspa root, to make the fofo we eat at every meal. Then Mama would cook the fofo and beat it, and while it was white and fluffy, and she would pile the food into big bowls with round handles, just right for our small hands to hold. Then we would march into the big round room, our bare feet gripping the earthen floor. The little ones went first, carrying the bowl of heated water and towels to wash the hands before and after eating. The oldest ones would carry in the stew, spicy and steamy, smells oh so good, and I would come in last, bearing the fofo. These are great pictures. That's why it's won a Caldecott winner for its great illustrations. Grandpa, as the eldest, would always eat first, dipping the first 3 fingers of one hand into the fofo, scooping up a small portion, which he dipped quickly into the stew bowl. The flavor of each bite with the spicy meat and juices, then in order of age, Grandma, Uncle Domo, and sometimes Mama, if she left the cook on fire, would finish their meal in the same way. And we children would follow last, making sure to leave the bowl clean. After supper, when the men went back to their square houses to smoke and talk about farming and fishing and the old days of the hunt, Grandpa would leave some tobacco for Grandma. He knew she liked to smoke it later when everything was peaceful. Then she would sit alone in the moonlight, looking up at the dark slope of Naka Mountain, rising high above. I remember one night, I sat beside her. Grandma Tika took a last puff on her pipe, then pointed to the sky above our village. You see the old Mother Naka smoking so peacefully there? I leaned way back and looked up to see Naka's breath rising in lazy puffs of smoke, soft and gray in the night sky. And you remember that sometimes in the night, we hear old Naka snoring in her sleep? I nodded, pleased that Grandma felt I was old enough to notice such things. Well, it's by these signs that we know she is content. Now we live in peace with Naka and the spirits of our ancestors, but it was not always so. Grandma fixed me up a stair and began to rock with the tale, for she was the best storyteller in the whole village. In the days of long, long ago, the people of this village lived in houses of any sort, either square or round. It did not matter. Then one peaceful night, before anyone alive remembers, old Naka began to groan and rumble and awoke from a long sleep. The villagers were frightened and ran out their houses and hid in the bushes and the foot of the mountain. Looks like it was a volcano or something, and they got scared and they had to run out and hide. A great wind came up, and the ancestor spirits in the trees cried out to warn them. Even the rocks began to tremble. Suddenly, the black night was split open like a coconut, and great white bursts of light rose like the sun. Then the voice of our Mother Naka thundered over and all, boom, ba-ba boom, ba-ba boom. And the people cried out to Naka and prayed where they were laying down, hands pressing in the earth, asking, what have we done to anger you so? So it was kind of like a volcano. All through the night, old Naka spoke to them, shouting her anger to the skies as red rivers of lava flowed down her sides. The morning sun rose, but no one could see him. The anger of Naka was too great, and ashes and smoke filled the air. Finally, no one remembers when, Naka spoke no more. Slowly, carefully, the people lifted their heads and looked about. Everything was covered with ashes, even themselves. Everyone looked like gray ghosts. No one knew who stood next to them or who came behind. So they stood there, trembling with fear, but grateful to be alive. Naka Head spared them. So they're very grateful that they were still alive and survived that big volcano. Even though they were full of ashes, they were just happy to be alive. Still covered with ashes, the men, women, and children faced the mountain together and went back to claim their houses. But when they came to the burned out village, only 2 houses were standing, one square and one round. The people saw that only these 2 houses had been spared by Naka, and they wondered to themselves, why these? Was this a sign? I wonder if that was meant to happen. And that's what they're thinking. But the village chief had no time for such questions, and he called them together. We must begin to rebuild our village now. He pointed to the ash-covered people. You, tall gray things, you go live in the square houses. And you, round gray things, go live in the round houses. And you, small gray things over there, you go pick the small gray stones and fields so we can plant the crops again. And so it was done. The women lived in the round house with the children, and the women talked and laughed, preparing food for everyone. And the men stayed in the square house, and they told each other tall tales and planted yams and corn each day in the new, rich soil. And the children made a game out of cleaning the fields of small gray stones and went swimming and fishing in the long afternoons. And no one forgot to thank Naka for sparing their lives and giving them back such fine crops from her good earth. Grandma smiled down at me. And so you see, it has been to this day, for the women have decided they enjoy getting together to talk and laugh and sing, and the men have become used to being together and relaxing in their own place. And the children? Osa, it is not true. The children still keep the fields clear and the little gray stones. Yes, I laughed, and we still swim and play in the afternoon. But we bring home fish and we catch for supper, and we shall get together then. Grandma laughed too. So you see, so we live together peacefully here, because each one has a place to be apart and time to be together. She took me by the hand and turned back to the round house, and that is how the way came, and we will continue. Till Naka speaks again. Interesting. How do you guys think it would be if your family lived in separate houses like this village did? They seem to be very peaceful and take it as a sign of how Naka wanted them to live and what they still continue to do until she speaks again. Now, before I read this story, the author put this little summary here, and it's not, I guess it's not a summary, but a little author's note that she put. Yes, that she put. This village really exists, just the way it always has, in the remote hills of the Camerons in Central Africa. It is almost entirely isolated, with no paved roads closer to than the full 8 hours away. None but the most adventurous visitor would dare to risk the steep, bumpy, rocky clay paths leading to the roofed village that clings to one side and almost an extinct volcano. Today, the village of Tos remains. I know, for I have been there. The homesick girl who brought us there told us its story. So this village is real, and this story of why they live in separate houses is a true story of what they believe of why they live in separate houses. So it's very interesting, and like it mentioned, very dangerous to go to this village just because it's so far, and the nearest road is 8 hours away. So just imagine the adventure of getting there and how, scary or it could be to try to get there. But they're still surviving, and it's still a village that exists today. Very interesting. So again, this book is going against Kitten's Full Moon. So very different, but still, I'll put it this way, very different books, but very different perspectives on what you like. So go ahead and email your teacher or send her a dojo message on which book you like more. It's always hard for me to vote because these are just great books and different in their own ways, but I'm excited to see who wins. So see you guys tomorrow. Bye.